He thought he could dismiss her without a second thought, but had no idea Emily Carter was about to redefine their expectations. The morning sun cut through the dust of the construction site, glinting off the steel beams and scaffolding, casting long, sharp shadows across the gravel-strewn ground. Emily moved quietly among the equipment, clipboard in hand, her light gray work shirt tucked neatly into faded jeans, steel-toed boots clicking softly against the concrete. At 32, she had mastered the art of blending in, letting her presence go unnoticed while observing every detail, every measurement, every nuance of the ongoing project. Mark Reynolds, the construction manager, strode across the site in a crisp navy polo, the logo of the firm stitched prominently on his chest, his hard hat perched perfectly, his expression a mixture of authority and impatience. He paused, eyes narrowing at Emily as she adjusted the alignment of a series of beams, whispering notes into her tablet with quiet precision. "Emily, come over here," he called out sharply, not waiting for her response. Her eyes lifted briefly, meeting his gaze with calm steadiness, a small nod acknowledging the request. He gestured dismissively toward a group of workers, smirking. "You really think you understand this? Let me see what you can do." Emily stepped forward, her movements deliberate, her fingers brushing the edges of the blueprints, her mind quietly mapping the structure, the angles, the load points, and the calculations she had committed to memory over years of studying engineering principles in community college and applied project work. The hum of machinery, the clatter of hammers, the distant roar of trucks, all of it faded into a background hum as she focused, her posture straight, her breath measured, her eyes scanning every line and annotation with meticulous care. Workers nearby glanced at the exchange, sensing tension, some curious, some doubtful, while others simply continued their tasks, not wanting to get involved in the confrontation that was about to unfold. Mark shifted his weight, tapping a hard hat against his palm, a faint chuckle escaping his lips. "Let's see if you're little." "Theory matches reality, quiet girl," he said, his voice carrying over the din of the site. Emily's lips curved in a faint, controlled smile. She did not answer, for words were unnecessary. Every movement, every note she took, every calculation in her head was already setting the stage for the revelation she intended to deliver. The afternoon light grew harsher, dust particles floating like tiny golden specks as Emily moved toward the section of the project that had been flagged as problematic. The blueprint in her hand was old, slightly worn at the edges, but she had memorized every corner, every dimension. As she crouched and began to make her adjustments, her fingers tracing lines and angles with the confidence of someone who understood the interplay between physics and structure, Mark's smirk faltered for the briefest moment, though he masked it quickly with a cough. The other workers had begun to stop, their attention drawn to her methodical movements, the way she double-checked measurements, the precision with which she instructed the crew around her in soft, commanding tones. Emily didn't raise her voice, she didn't demand attention. She simply moved with quiet authority, letting her work speak louder than any words could. In the background, a gentle breeze lifted dust across the beams, the site alive with the sound of progress, yet marked by an unusual tension as everyone silently acknowledged that something exceptional was about to unfold. The hum of the construction site continued as Emily moved seamlessly among the beams and scaffolding, her hands steady and eyes sharp. Each calculation she made on the tablet was precise, double-checked against her mental notes, and each adjustment she instructed the crew to make was executed without hesitation. Dust swirled around her boots as the sun rose higher, casting harsh shadows that traced the outline of the partially completed structure. Mark Reynolds walked closer, clipboard in hand, pretending to inspect the work but his gaze continually flicking to Emily with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. He called over one of the assistant supervisors, muttering about how unusual it was to see a quiet assistant take the lead, yet he did not intervene, wanting to observe how far she could go. Emily continued to cross-check measurements, repositioning temporary supports, and guiding the placement of heavy steel beams with a confidence that made her actions seem almost effortless. Workers began to take notice, exchanging subtle glances, their murmurs barely audible over the sounds of the site, a mixture of admiration and disbelief growing in their expressions. The whir of the crane, the rhythmic pounding of hammers, and the occasional clatter of tools filled the air, yet Emily remained entirely focused, moving between the blueprints and the actual construction, ensuring every angle, every bolt, every connection was precise. Mark shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his professional facade showing signs of strain as he realized that Emily's quiet demeanor concealed a depth of knowledge and skill he had not anticipated. He watched as she directed a small crew to correct a misalignment that he had overlooked, her instructions clear, her voice calm and authoritative without ever needing to raise it. The sunlight glinted off the steel as Emily adjusted a beam with exacting precision, her movements deliberate yet fluid, demonstrating a mastery of spatial awareness and structural understanding that drew the attention of everyone around. Mark's expression tightened, a flash of disbelief crossing his face as he observed how quickly the adjustments were made, how seamlessly she anticipated potential issues before they could arise. Emily's focus never wavered, her eyes scanning the structure as if reading the language of construction itself, noting tensions, load points, and potential weaknesses with a mind trained to anticipate and solve problems. The workers, who moments ago had been skeptical or indifferent, now followed her guidance attentively, executing her directions with efficiency and care, their earlier amusement replaced with quiet respect. A soft breeze carried the scent of fresh concrete and cut timber through the air, moving dust in tiny eddies that caught the light, emphasizing the movement and precision of Emily's work. Mark stepped back, unconsciously nodding to himself as he recognized the competence and calm decisiveness that Emily displayed, realizing that the quiet assistant he had dismissed was in fact orchestrating the repair and adjustment of a critical section of the project with skill and authority beyond expectation. Emily stepped back for a moment, surveying the adjustments she had made, her eyes tracing each beam and joint to ensure everything was aligned perfectly. The sunlight reflected off her safety glasses, highlighting the calm determination etched across her face. Workers stood quietly around her, some leaning on shovels, others resting hands on their tool belts, all captivated by her methodical precision and focus. Mark Reynolds walked slowly along the perimeter of the work area, clipboard forgotten at his side, as he observed the subtle movements and decisions she was making. Each instruction she gave was clear, concise, and immediately actionable, her quiet voice carrying authority without force. The structural beams, once misaligned by a minor miscalculation, now fit seamlessly, the supports perfectly balanced, creating a stability that had previously been in question. Emily's hands moved over the plans, tapping measurements and sketching small corrections in the margins, her mind working faster than anyone could follow, yet she made it appear effortless. A faint breeze carried the scent of cut wood and fresh concrete through the site, mingling with the rhythmic hum of the machinery and distant sounds of vehicles moving along the access road. The other engineers and supervisors began to murmur quietly among themselves, their earlier skepticism replaced with cautious admiration, noting the efficiency and accuracy with which she identified potential issues and implemented solutions. Mark took a deep breath, his expression shifting from smug disbelief to subtle respect, though he still attempted to maintain an air of control, walking closer and observing every calculation, every adjustment, every subtle motion that Emily executed with unwavering focus. As she stepped forward to direct the final placement of a critical beam, she checked the angles with her digital level and gave precise, calm instructions to the crew, her movements confident and deliberate. Each worker responded promptly, following her directions with careful attention, and the once uncertain and noisy site now operated with an almost seamless rhythm, every action synchronized under her quiet command. Emily paused to cross-reference the beam alignment with the original blueprint, her eyes scanning for discrepancies, her brow slightly furrowed in concentration but her demeanor unshakable, a calm center amidst the controlled chaos of the construction environment. Mark exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly as he realized the depth of her knowledge and skill, his previous assumptions about her abilities dissolving with each precise adjustment she made. The site had fallen into a quiet attentiveness, the hum of activity now underscored by an awareness of Emily's authority and competence, as if the very structure they were building was now guided by her unseen hand, her quiet determination commanding attention without a single raised voice. Mark Reynolds straightened his hard hat and stepped back, his arms folding across his chest as he watched Emily coordinate the placement of the last set of steel beams. The afternoon sun glinted off the metallic surfaces, casting sharp highlights across the site, illuminating the dust motes that floated lazily in the air. Emily crouched slightly, checking the tension of the cables and the alignment of the supports, her fingers tracing the edges of the beams as she whispered directions that were heard clearly by the crew but carried with a calm precision rather than force. Each worker moved as though guided by an invisible hand, following her soft yet authoritative instructions, the clatter of tools now synchronized with her rhythm. Mark's eyes narrowed, not in skepticism but in a growing realization of her capability, the subtle changes she suggested resolving structural questions that had previously been debated among the site engineers. The hum of machinery and the distant thrum of the cement mixer seemed to fade into the background as Emily adjusted minor discrepancies, her mind calculating angles, loads, and balances. Almost instinctively, she pointed toward a junction where the support beam met the primary girder, instructing a worker to slightly reposition a connector, and he complied without hesitation, watching as her eyes flicked across the structure, noticing nuances that even seasoned engineers might have overlooked. A light breeze carried the scent of concrete and sawdust through the site, lifting the corners of her blueprints briefly before she pressed them down and continued her inspection. Mark took a slow step closer, watching the calm efficiency of her movements, the way she spoke to the crew in concise sentences that left no room for error, and for the first time, he felt a mixture of admiration and surprise. Around them, other supervisors and workers had stopped their activities, drawn to the scene, witnessing the quiet authority Emily projected, her presence commanding respect without raising her voice or demanding attention. She moved seamlessly from one section to another, checking measurements, giving subtle adjustments, and coordinating logistics with a poise that belied her age and the simplicity of her attire. Mark exhaled audibly, the tension in his shoulders easing as he mentally acknowledged that Emily's quiet demeanor had masked a mastery that surpassed his initial assumptions. The site, once noisy and scattered with casual chatter, now operated with an almost choreographed precision, each action informed by Emily's calm guidance, and a sense of order emerged as if she had always been the center of the construction's orchestration. Even the sun, casting long afternoon shadows, seemed to pause in alignment with her methodical pace, highlighting the subtle authority she held over the work unfolding before them. Mark glanced around at the other workers, seeing the tentative nods, the small gestures of recognition, and he realized that the respect Emily had earned was not demanded, but given freely, the quiet confidence she exuded leaving an undeniable impression on everyone present. Emily paused for a brief moment, letting her gaze sweep across the construction site, noting the completion of the critical adjustments she had overseen. The workers moved with a quiet confidence now, following her subtle cues and double-checking each alignment as though guided by an unspoken command. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows over the scaffolding and steel beams, emphasizing the precision and order that had emerged from what had once seemed chaotic. Mark Reynolds stood a few feet away, his hands resting lightly on his hips, watching intently as Emily consulted her digital plans one last time, making slight corrections with a calm deliberation that belied the complexity of the task. The sound of hammers, drills, and machinery continued in a measured rhythm, harmonizing with the meticulous pace that Emily had set, turning the site into a space of controlled efficiency. She moved from one section of the framework to another, her fingers tracing the edges of beams, her eyes scanning the placement of bolts and supports, noting minor inconsistencies and correcting them silently with gestures and concise instructions. Mark's posture shifted subtly, a reflection of his growing respect, as he noticed how every action she took resolved problems he had not anticipated and prevented potential setbacks before they could even arise. The crew around them began to whisper among themselves, acknowledging the skill and foresight Emily displayed without need for loud commands or overt authority, her quiet presence commanding attention through competence alone. Emily adjusted a complex joint where multiple steel supports intersected, measuring angles with careful precision and signaling to a crew member to hold a beam in place while she secured it with exacting care. Her movements were efficient, almost graceful, as if she had rehearsed each step in her mind countless times before arriving at this moment. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of fresh timber and metal, and dust motes danced through the sunlight, highlighting the subtle, coordinated motion of the workers responding to her instructions. Mark took a slow, deliberate step back, his gaze moving from the top of the beams down to the foundation, registering the meticulous attention to detail that had transformed the area into a flawlessly organized section of the project. Emily's eyes, calm and unwavering, scanned the final adjustments, making minute corrections and verifying measurements, her hands steady and precise. The energy on the site had changed. There was a quiet awe in the air, a collective recognition of her capability, the workers nodding slightly as they completed tasks with care, and even the machines seemed to operate in sync with the rhythm she had established. Mark exhaled quietly, a mix of disbelief and admiration crossing his features, acknowledging silently that the quiet woman he had dismissed had orchestrated a flawless execution that exceeded all expectations, her skill and composure leaving a lasting impression on everyone present, the sight humming with a newfound respect and recognition for the calm authority Emily commanded without a single word raised. Emily took a final step back, her eyes scanning the completed section of the construction site with quiet satisfaction. The afternoon sun had begun to descend, casting warm, golden light across the steel framework and concrete foundation, highlighting the precision and care that had been applied to every joint and alignment. Workers lingered nearby, watching her movements and whispering softly among themselves, their earlier skepticism replaced with an unmistakable admiration. Mark Reynolds remained at a distance, observing silently, his clipboard now forgotten, as he noted the seamless integration of adjustments Emily had overseen and how efficiently the crew had responded to her guidance. Every measurement had been cross-checked, every angle verified, and every potential issue anticipated and corrected with a calm authority that contrasted sharply with the hurried and often chaotic approach he had expected. Emily moved slowly from one beam to another, her fingers tracing lines and checking bolts, her eyes flicking between the blueprints on her tablet and the actual structure, ensuring absolute accuracy. The subtle breeze carried the scent of fresh timber and metal, and dust motes floated in the golden light, highlighting the quiet diligence of her work. The crew began to straighten their postures, following her subtle instructions without needing raised voices, the site operating with an unexpected precision that drew glances of respect from even the most seasoned workers. Mark exhaled, a mixture of disbelief and growing respect evident in his expression, as he recognized the depth of knowledge and foresight Emily possessed. He observed the way she calmly instructed a team member to adjust a beam by a mere fraction of an inch, how she anticipated load distributions, and how she ensured that every component fit perfectly within the overall structure. The sun reflected off the steel beams, emphasizing the meticulous alignment and flawless integration of each adjustment, creating a sense of order and harmony across the work area. Emily's gaze swept across the site once more, noting minor details and confirming the integrity of every section, her calm and unwavering presence commanding attention without a single raised voice or hurried gesture. Workers exchanged subtle nods and murmurs of approval, their confidence in the project and in her guidance now firmly established. Mark finally allowed himself a slow, impressed smile, realizing that the quiet woman he had underestimated had not only corrected critical errors but had elevated the entire workflow to a level of precision and efficiency that surpassed his expectations. The site, once noisy and fragmented, now moved with coordinated ease under her quiet command, each action reflecting the competence and authority she had demonstrated from the very beginning, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that her skill and insight were extraordinary. Emily stepped forward with calm assurance, her eyes scanning the blueprint one final time before addressing the crew with a soft, commanding tone. She pointed out the last critical adjustment, demonstrating with a gentle hand gesture how the alignment should be verified, and each worker followed her direction attentively, checking and double-checking their work as she moved from one area to another. The golden afternoon light gleamed off the polished steel surfaces, highlighting the precision of the adjustments and casting long, clear shadows across the site. Mark Reynolds watched silently, the smirk he had worn earlier replaced with an expression of measured astonishment, his arms folding slowly across his chest as he registered how seamlessly Emily had orchestrated the corrections. The hum of machinery, the rhythmic tapping of tools, and the distant clatter of trucks seemed to harmonize with her movements, creating a sense of order that contrasted sharply with the scattered activity from earlier in the day. Emily checked each connection point, adjusting bolts with exacting precision, confirming the angles of the beams with her level, and ensuring that each support was firmly in place. Workers exchanged quiet, respectful glances, their initial doubts giving way to a newfound recognition of her expertise. Even the supervisors, who had initially questioned her capability, began to follow her guidance with subtle acknowledgement, trusting her judgment without needing constant instruction. Emily moved with a deliberate, unhurried grace, her hands steady as she coordinated the final steps of the project section, her eyes observing potential points of strain and correcting them before they could become issues. The warm sunlight reflected off her safety glasses, catching the attention of nearby workers who could not help but notice the focused intensity and unwavering calm she exuded. Mark took a slow step closer, his mouth slightly parted as he observed the fluidity of her movements, the quiet authority that radiated from her, and the precision with which she anticipated every possible complication and resolved it with subtle adjustments. The crew now operated with a quiet, cohesive rhythm, their motions guided by her careful instructions, the atmosphere charged with a mix of awe and respect. Emily finally lowered her clipboard, stepping back and surveying the area, her expression serene, the subtle nod she gave the team signaling the completion of their tasks. Mark inhaled deeply, recognizing the extraordinary skill and calm competence that Emily had displayed, understanding for the first time that the quiet woman he had dismissed had managed not only to resolve a complex challenge but had elevated the performance of the entire site. The sunlight glinted across the steel beams, illuminating the exactness of the work and the organized efficiency she had instilled, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that her skill was exceptional and that the respect she had earned was fully deserved. The construction site fell into a profound silence as Emily stepped back, her eyes meeting Mark Reynolds for the first time since the day had begun. His expression, once filled with smug certainty, now reflected a mix of astonishment and reluctant admiration as he processed the precision and confidence she had demonstrated. The crew remained still, their attention riveted on her calm presence, recognizing the quiet authority she had established without raising her voice or demanding attention. The late afternoon sun cast warm light across the steel beams and scaffolding, illuminating the flawless alignment of the structure and highlighting the meticulous adjustments Emily had orchestrated. A soft breeze rustled the scattered blueprints and stirred the dust, giving movement to the otherwise still scene, accentuating the subtle shift in atmosphere as everyone acknowledged her competence. Workers exchanged glances, nodding slightly as they silently communicated their respect for her expertise, some straightening their posture, others brushing dust off their gloves, all moving now with an awareness that the project had been guided by a skill far beyond what they had expected from someone so unassuming. Mark exhaled slowly, his eyes tracing the lines of the beams, the precise connections, the way the supports had been perfectly balanced under Emily's careful direction, and for a long moment he remained motionless, understanding fully that his initial assumptions about her abilities had been completely overturned. Emily continued her measured walk along the perimeter, inspecting the final touches, subtly adjusting a beam here, confirming measurements there, her movements fluid and deliberate, reflecting years of disciplined knowledge and hands-on experience. The hum of machinery persisted, but it now felt harmonious with her presence, as if the entire site had attuned itself to the rhythm she had silently set. Crew members murmured quietly, acknowledging her insights without words, their earlier doubt replaced with admiration, realizing that the solutions she had implemented had prevented potential errors and elevated the quality of the work beyond what had been anticipated. Mark finally allowed himself a small, appreciative nod, the first gesture of recognition that Emily's skill had commanded the project with authority, efficiency, and an unwavering calm. The sunlight reflected off the steel in sharp angles, drawing attention to the precision of the framework and the orderly progress that now defined the site. Emily stood momentarily, surveying the completed adjustments, her expression serene, her posture relaxed yet confident, embodying the quiet mastery she had exercised throughout the day. Workers began to return to their tasks, now guided by the subtle standards she had set, the air filled with a sense of respect and acknowledgement that transcended words. Mark, still observing, felt the weight of his misjudgment and the undeniable reality that Emily's competence had not only met but exceeded every expectation, leaving the entire crew aware that the quiet woman they had overlooked had fundamentally transformed the worksite with her expertise and poise. The site was calm now, the late afternoon sun softening into warm amber as Emily Carter took a slow, deliberate step back, surveying the work she had guided to completion. The framework of steel and concrete gleamed in the light, every beam perfectly aligned, every connection secure, a testament to her careful observation and technical skill. Workers moved quietly among the scaffolding, checking minor details and exchanging subtle nods, a newfound respect evident in their expressions as they recognized the precision and foresight she had brought to the project. Mark Reynolds remained rooted near the central support structure, his eyes following her movements, absorbing the full scope of what had been accomplished under her quiet guidance. He exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders finally easing as he processed that the assumptions he had made about her capabilities had been completely wrong. Emily moved methodically along the perimeter, verifying the alignment of the final sections, her gestures measured, her eyes calm and precise, communicating authority without needing to speak loudly. The sound of the site, machines humming, tools clinking, trucks in the distance, continued, yet it now felt harmonized with the rhythm she had set, every movement and adjustment reflecting the clarity of her focus. Crew members worked with attentive care, implementing her suggestions with precision, their confidence in the project elevated by her steady presence. Mark walked slowly around the site, occasionally glancing at the completed work and then at Emily, a subtle smile breaking across his face as he acknowledged her quiet mastery, the skill and knowledge she displayed far surpassing his initial expectations. He could see how her calm assessment had resolved potential challenges before they became problems, her anticipation of structural complexities ensuring that the site was not only corrected but optimized. The sunlight caught the edges of the beams, casting sharp lines that mirrored the clarity and order Emily had instilled throughout the area. Dust swirled gently in the breeze, highlighting her every motion as she stepped back, clipboard in hand, checking off final items and confirming that all measurements and alignments met exacting standards. Workers exchanged quiet, respectful looks, their prior doubts replaced with admiration, silently acknowledging that her leadership, though understated and calm, had directed the entire team to achieve results they had not thought possible. Mark finally allowed himself to approach, standing near Emily with a measured respect in his posture, his eyes reflecting the realization that she had quietly transformed the worksite through competence, precision, and unwavering calm. As Emily straightened, surveying the scene with a serene confidence, the atmosphere on the site shifted fully into one of recognition and appreciation, the collective awareness of her skill settling over everyone present, leaving no doubt that the quiet woman who had been underestimated was now the unspoken authority, her work and presence commanding respect through expertise alone, the entire team united in acknowledgement of the remarkable mastery she had demonstrated throughout the day.